Last week, Bryan set out a tweet in which he stated, and I quote, "I injected Botox into my penis. It increases penis length by 1 centimeter. It also improves erection hardness, peak systolic velocity, end diastolic velocity, and sexual health satisfaction." Hey everyone, it's Dr. Bryan Cotter, co-founder and global medical director of Sisu Clinic. Today I'm going to talk to you about a hot topic. It's an interesting one, especially for all you guys, and it's going to be on penises and Botox. So to all guys out there watching this, I'm sure you're probably thinking, what? So last week on Twitter, billionaire Bryan Johnson, so for those of you who don't know him, Bryan is an interesting guy who sold his company for hundreds of millions of dollars and has gone on a quest to live long. He is a big fan of longevity, and he has been doing personalized studies, trials, interventions to decrease what we call his biological age. Last week, Bryan set out a tweet in which he stated, and I quote, "I injected Botox into my penis. It increases penis length by 1 centimeter. It also improves erection hardness, peak systolic velocity, end diastolic velocity, and sexual health satisfaction." So I see that most guys watching this, their ears have probably pricked up, and maybe also even other people watching this if you have it on loud. Botox and its use in relation to other parts of the body, so primarily for us at Sisu Clinic, we obviously use it for cosmetic purposes, but also it can be used commonly in other aspects of medicine. So what's important to note is that Bryan has both means, and from previous research that he's published, has the scientific validity to talk about these things. So in part with it, Bryan has the money to put where his mouth is, or in part, in this instance, his penis. With something like this, he talks about his penile function is optimal, so he gives various scores with it, and without getting too technical, Bryan maxes out on both. He basically said that we are testing whether an intervention that showed positive outcomes with erectile dysfunction will enhance performance. So Botox can smoothen lines and wrinkles. It can also increase your sexual performance. So this is something, again, that's pretty interesting. Obviously within it, Twitter being Twitter, it absolutely exploded, and some of the response tweets were eye-raising, humorous, hilarious. One of them came basically and said that trusting humanity into the future. Again, with it, you can see that this comment section had over 800 comments, and again, it was a viral tweet, and he puts in a kind of interesting and funny picture of a basketball team and a duck standing on its hind legs. So what's interesting is for Bryan with it, and I do follow him and I'm curious about him. Bryan has invested over $4 million in his longevity research, and he is basically trying to get to the point where he can understand what is the biology of aging, how do you reduce it down, and how do you turn back the clock. And that's based on things like nutrition, supplementation, physical exercise, interventions from LED therapies to oxygen therapies to laser therapies, and one of my favorites, sculpture. He did say that the unorthodox move, so this is a kind of I suppose a little bit of a departure from his typical longevity research. He said that basically this was a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled, prospective comparative study involving 70 patients with erectile dysfunction whose conditions didn't respond to standard treatments like PDE5 inhibitors like Viagra. So again with it, what's interesting is erectile dysfunction, take all the jokes out about penis jokes or whatever the case is, it is an issue that affects a lot of men. So Viagra with it is a multi-billion-dollar drug that has huge efficacy and huge popularity throughout the world. Is Botox the next answer for those who maybe aren't responsive to something like Viagra? Who knows? Bryan Johnson certainly seems to think that that's the case. So for those of you watching it, and those of you who've come halfway through or maybe towards the end, Botox in your penis, it's a thing.